Have you ever just stopped and wondered, right when you pull out your phone to book a vacation, how in the world does that one travel app suddenly know every single flight time from every single airline all around the globe? I mean, really think about it. That travel app, it doesn't own the airplanes, it doesn't own the radar systems, and it literally doesn't own the massive servers sitting inside the headquarters of all those different airlines. Yet somehow, in a matter of milliseconds, it perfectly displays the exact departure times, seat availability, and the current prices. So how is it actually possible to exchange all of this critical information without owning any of the underlying infrastructure?
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we are totally unpacking the invisible engine that powers our modern world. Today, we're demystifying APIs, the architecture of digital business. Whether you're someone who has literally never heard the term before, maybe an intermediate learner trying to really grasp the framework, or an advanced professional looking to completely rethink your business strategy, this explainer is built in 3 distinct layers, specifically for you. By the end of this, you won't just understand the technology, you're going to understand the architecture of digital business itself.
All right, let's just completely strip away the technical jargon right out of the gate. What exactly is an API? Technically, it stands for Application Programming Interface. But honestly, the absolute best way to think about it is as a digital middleman. It's basically this standardized bridge that allows completely different, totally disconnected software systems to seamlessly communicate and exchange data. Going back to our flight example for a second, the API is that digital messenger that runs from your travel app, goes all the way to the airline's database, asks for the flight data, and then brings the exact answer right back to your screen.
Layer 1. The digital middleman.
To really see this in action, let's map out exactly how this digital middleman functions in our daily lives, because it's the foundation of almost every digital experience you enjoy today. Here's the step-by-step breakdown. Step 1, you, the user, search for a flight from New York to London. Step 2, the travel app takes your request and packages it up into what we call a payload. Basically, it's just the specific details of what you're asking for. Step 3, the API takes that payload and queries the airline server. And finally, Step 4, the server processes the request and sends back a response, which is the exact flight times and prices. The API then instantly translates that back to your screen. It is this continuous loop of request and response, happening literally billions of times a day worldwide, faster than you can even blink.
Now, here's kind of a fascinating question. If a travel app built by some startup in California needs to talk to a legacy airline system built like 30 years ago in Europe, how do they even understand each other? Well, they use the universal language of data exchange, most commonly known as JSON or XML. You definitely don't need to know how to write them, you just need to know that they act as a universal translator. It essentially ensures that no matter what programming language a system was originally built in, the data is passed back and forth in a super simple structured format that any machine can easily read.
Let's move to Layer 2, the framework, and see how this builds.
So, for the intermediate learners and working professionals out there, let's look at the actual mechanics. How does a developer or a product manager structure these requests to actually get things done? Well, everything relies on something called an endpoint. Think of an endpoint as a very specific digital address. It acts as a logistical gateway. Just like a massive physical warehouse has different doors for receiving goods, shipping goods, or handling returns, a server has different endpoints. When an application wants to retrieve data, it doesn't just, knock on the front door of a server and ask around. It sends a request to a precise endpoint URL that is specifically designated to route that request to a designated function on the server.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core commands that power those endpoints, known as HTTP methods. Imagine you're managing an e-commerce platform. A GET method is used to retrieve data, like fetching an inventory count to see if a pair of shoes is in stock. A POST method sends or creates new data, like creating a brand new customer order. A PUT method updates existing data, say updating the stock level from 10 down to 9 after a sale. And a delete method does exactly what you'd think. It removes data, like canceling an order. These 4 methods literally represent the core vocabulary of digital business logic.
But wait a second, how do you actually know if your get, post, or delete really worked? You look at the status code. Take the number 201, for instance. When a system sends a post request to create a new order and it's totally successful, the API doesn't send back some polite, long-winded paragraph saying, "Hey, great job, the order's ready." No, it just bluntly returns the number 201, which is the universal machine code for created. These status codes perfectly bridge human intent with immediate machine execution. They give us instant confirmation without any unnecessary data overhead.
Securing the gates. Now, obviously, if systems are effortlessly sharing incredibly valuable business data,
Things like inventory counts, user profiles, financial transactions, across the internet, they can't just leave the doors wide open for anyone. And this is exactly where API keys and authentication come into play. Think of an API key as the digital ID card, or a highly exclusive bouncer at the door of a VIP club. If you try to make an API call to a premium weather service or a stock exchange, the very first thing the system asks for is your key. This key authenticates who you are, it tracks your usage, and it ensures you actually have the right to access that specific endpoint. Without the key, the door stays firmly shut.
But, just authenticating the user isn't quite enough. You also have to fiercely protect that data while it's actually traveling. Organizations lock down their domains by enforcing secure connections. They use SSL certificates to ensure that all communication runs over encrypted HTTPS channels rather than just basic HTTP. What this means in plain English is that even if someone maliciously intercepted the data payload while it was flying across the internet, it would look like absolute gibberish. The connection is locked, encrypted, and enforced right at the server level.
Layer 3, the bigger idea.
Okay, for the advanced strategists watching, we're now shifting our perspective from how APIs work to why they entirely dictate modern business strategy. It represents a massive game-changing shift in corporate mindset. You see, the legacy mindset was all about building massive, rigid, in-house monolithic structures. If a company wanted a mapping feature, they literally tried to build a map from scratch. But the API mindset, it changes everything. It operates on a modular architecture. It's exactly like assembling best-in-class interchangeable Lego blocks. Need a map? Plug in a mapping API. Need to process payments? Plug in a payment API. You don't build the infrastructure from the ground up anymore. You just assemble the perfect product from the very best pieces available.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. APIs have evolved. They are no longer just back-end plumbing for IT teams to deal with. They provide infrastructure independence. They are highly scalable business assets. In fact, so many companies today package up their data and algorithms and sell them as standalone digital products. This has birthed what we call the API economy, a whole new world where companies generate billions of dollars in revenue simply by charging a fraction of a cent every single time another business makes a request to their endpoints. It is wild.
Which brings us to our final thought. APIs are not just how software talks to software, they are how businesses talk to the future. Whether you're a beginner seeing this digital middleman for the very first time, an intermediate learner configuring endpoints, or an advanced executive scaling a modular architecture, understanding APIs is fundamentally understanding the language of modern innovation. Next time you look at the apps on your phone, ask yourself, what endpoints are they calling? What Lego blocks are they using? As we step further into the matrix of the API economy, the real question you have to ask yourself is your business building monolithic walls, or are you building the bridges?